Okay, so it's time for us to sit down and talk about X-Man Nate Gray going up against Excalibur. Now, this is a two-part story arc that for me personally is kind of well done. And the reason why I'm saying that because when it comes to Nate Gray, remember that in the early days of his series, he had just arrived on the main Marvel Universe Earth because this character comes from the age of Apocalypse reality. And so for Nate Gray, it's him now meeting almost all the different characters who are part of the X family in all his books in different moments in time. So for example, in our last video, he ran into Charles Xavier, but now it's time for him to run into Excalibur. And the reason why he's heading over to Muir Island is because for Nate Gray, he kind of realized that sometimes when using his powers, he does feel completely drained to the point where he's not really able to continue on to use his abilities. Now, he also heard about the legacy virus. Now, remember, the legacy virus is killing off mutants left and right, and technically, it's now going after humans as well, even though we only have one human case at the moment, and that would be Moira Taggart. But for Nate Gray, he believes that the reason why he's getting exhausted or possibly getting weaker is because he might have the legacy virus. And so Rogue told him like, hey, if you head over to Muir Island, most likely Moira Taggart could be able to help you to figure out what's going on with you. Except when the man first arrives on Muir Island, he gets a huge beatdown from Excalibur. And the reason why, because over in the Hulk book, you had Hulk do something really big and major. And so for Captain Britain, he kind of believed that Nate Gray was also connected to the Hulk incident and believed him to be some kind of terrorist. And so that's why he was kind of like, hey, Excalibur, we got somebody on the island and I have no idea who that person is. And so you had Excalibur beat him down until you have Moira Taggart step in and say, stop. This man is our guest. I knew he was coming because Charles Xavier had called me up. And so now it's time for Moira Taggart to begin to work on Nate Gray. Now, once you do have Nate Gray wake up, he does talk to Moira Taggart about why he's there on Muir Island. And he does tell her like, hey, listen, I kind of feel like the legacy virus inside of me because every once in a while, when I try to use my abilities, I get these major headaches, but also I feel completely drained. I feel weakened. And so for Moira Taggart, being one of the few experts on the legacy virus, she agrees to help him out. But first, the dude needs to eat and relax a tad bit. Now, we also learned that Mr. Sinister is also looking for Nate Gray as well. Now, for Sinister, he does call up a character known as Trinity. Now, for Trinity, we met her a while back in our coverage over the X-Men. You see, she has the ability to absorb the energy of a dying person and turn that energy into a blast. Now, Sinister was able to help her, but he also kind of hooked her up into his entire system to collect information across the entire world. And so for Sinister, he's kind of wondering, has she heard anything at all about Nate Gray? Now she lies here and says, no, I have not heard anything at all. But the reason why she lied is because she wants to use Nate Gray as a way to break away from Mr. Sinister. But as we get back over to Moira Taggart and also Nate Gray, we see Moira being able to finish Nate's test. And we do kind of find out, no, he does not have the legacy virus at all. But the questions are still there. Like, why in the world does he get weak after using his abilities? Why does he get major headaches after using his abilities? So many questions left up in the air. Now, once you do have Moira say, you know what, go ahead, get some rest, get some food. I will look over your test to see if I'm able to find the answers to our questions. Now, as he does leave her lab, he kind of realized there's somebody else, another mutant locked away. He's kind of wondering like, why is there a mutant locked away for? That right there seems weird to me. But then he goes outside and he finds Wolfbane. Now, for Nate Gray, he does know a tad bit of information about Wolfbane, and the reason why, because Moira Taggart was talking about her earlier. Now, remember, when it comes to Wolfbane, she's technically the adoptive daughter to Moira, but for Wolfbane, she said while being on Muir Island, Moira would tell her all these different types of stories and the possibility of treasures being out there nearby the island. And so for Nate Gray, he kind of wants to help her see or find those treasures around the island. So he grabs her hand and they fly away. Now, as they do fly away, you have Moira Taggart tell us, the readers, that for Nate Gray, he does kind of remind her of her own son, Proteus. Now, that right there is very important. And the reason why, because Proteus was a very powerful character. The problem is that Proteus died a while back in our coverage over the X-Men. So kind of hinting at the idea that possibly Nate could die. And really, the next page kind of gives Moira Taggart that right to be concerned, because while you have Nate Gray using his abilities to help Wolfbane find, different artifacts around the island, different treasures, well, while using his powers, his nose begins to bleed. And that right there is another hint at the idea that there's something wrong with Nate Gray. And as we go back over to Moira Taggart, we see her on the phone with Charles Xavier. Now, with her being on the phone with Charles Xavier is where we learn that Nate Gray is dying. And the reason why? Because of his powers. And you see, when it came to Mr. Sinister, the one from the Age of Apocalypse reality, the one that had created Nate Gray, he put in safeguards to make sure that once Nate was able to get rid of Apocalypse, then there's some kind of way to bring Nate down to allow Sinister to continue on with all his different ideas. And so for Nate, that is why he had those headaches. That is why he feels weak after using his abilities, because he is slowly dying when he does use his powers. But things are about to get a whole lot worse, because remember, Nate Gray detected another mutant that was locked away at the base of Excalibur. And of course, that would be Spore. Now, Spore is a mutant that has the ability to play with your emotions. Now, he was locked away because earlier he attacked the base of Excalibur. But either way, once you do have Nate find Spore, he asks Spore like, hey, why in the world are you down here? And you have Spore tell Nate a story in a way where it's kind of like Excalibur is keeping him down there as some kind of prisoner, but he's down there against his own will. That technically he's the good guy and Excalibur are the ones who are the bad guys. And so for Nate, he kind of realized, or his head, he thinks he realized that once again he has been played like he has in the past. He believes Excalibur is just as bad as Dark Beast or the Sugar Man or even as the X-Men. And so you have Nate head right over to Moira Taggart. And this is the perfect example of the idea that Nate Gray, with him being created in a lab by Mr. Sinister, he honestly does not have a lot of life experience. And the reason why I'm bringing that up because he's jumping to conclusions before he has all the pieces. You see, when he goes over to read the mind of Moira Taggart, he finds the right pieces of information to make him believe that Spore is correct, that Spore is the good guy and Excalibur is the bad guys. But the problem is that he did not try to talk to Moira Taggart to get a better idea of what's actually going on. Because of him being irrational, he begins to attack her. And so for Nightcrawler and Colossus, while they're outside talking to one another, they just watch her entire lab get blown up, kind of wondering, did Nate Gray just kill off Moira Taggart? Now, the second half of this storyline does take place over in Excalibur issue number 95. We're getting very close to issue number 100, but we have to skip over a few pages because really the first few pages are more kind of like a review of the whole idea of Excalibur. But getting into the actual story, the first couple of pages we can actually talk about does take place before you had Nate Gray blow up Moira's lab. So for example, we pick up with Kitty Pryde and also Pete Wisdom. And really more is Kitty Pryde trying her best to explain things to Pete Wisdom of the whole idea of why Colossus had attacked him in our last Excalibur video. And really for Pete, he's kind of like, I don't really care how you try to explain it. The man was completely jealous of the fact that you had moved on and got with me. And speaking of Colossus, we do jump over to him and Nightcrawler, who are currently just outside talking to one another. And for Colossus, he kind of realized that nobody on the team is really trying to talk to him except for Nightcrawler. And really, it's more Kurt saying like, dude, you just attacked one of our team members because you were jealous. Like, give it some time. Don't worry. Sooner or later, the rest of the team will come around. Now, while you have the two characters talking to one another, that is when Mora's lab blows up. So now we have caught up and we're back in the present day. Now, really, the rest of the book is really more of Nate Gray kind of realizing that he's at the wrong here, because you do have Mora McTaggart saying like, dude, you're being irrational. You're not really trying to sit down and figure out what's going on. You hear one piece of information, you take that one piece of information and you run with it. And you do have more explain what is actually going on. Like, for example, Spore is a bad guy. His abilities have made you believe what he wanted you to believe. But on top of that, it's also her saying like, I have seen people like you, mutants who are really powerful, but unfortunately so powerful, their own powers end up killing them. And it's her saying that we're not here to kill you. Your own body is going to kill you. Like, matter of fact, you might die by the age of 21. Now, for Nate Gray, he begins to read the minds of all the different members of Excalibur. Now, with him doing that, it's kind of him getting a better idea of realizing where Excalibur stands at. It's him kind of realizing that, oh, I am completely wrong, that these people are truly here to help me and other people like me out in the world. And so you do have the book kind of end on the note where you do have Nate Gray tell Mora McTaggart that he's leaving to find a friend, but to also kind of build on his life experience, which honestly is completely zero. But it's really more him saying like, he is sorry for what he did, but he needs to understand what kind of person he is and what this world is truly like. But this is where we're going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below. And guys, see y'all next time. Later.